They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I learned that lesson at 73 years old, when my neighbor Marcus Whitfield tried to take away the only thing I had left in this world, my granddaughter, Emma. Let me take you back to where it all began, to that humid August evening when I first felt the cold finger of suspicion trace down my spine. My name is Robert Chen, and I've lived in the same house on Maple Drive for 42 years. I raised my daughter Sarah there, watched her grow up, get married, and have Emma. Then, 3 years ago, the drunk driver happened. One moment I had a daughter and son-in-law, the next I had legal guardianship papers, and a traumatized 6-year-old who wouldn't speak for months. Emma is 9 now. She's my everything, my reason to wake up, my reason to keep the house clean, my reason to learn how to braid hair from YouTube videos at 2 in the morning. She's smart, funny, and has her mother's laugh. That laugh is what keeps Sarah's memory alive for me. Marcus Whitfield moved in next door 2 years ago. He was in his late 40s, drove a BMW, wore expensive suits, and had the kind of smile that real estate agents perfect, all teeth, no warmth. He was friendly enough at first. He'd wave when he saw us, compliment my garden, ask how Emma was doing in school. "Such a bright girl," he'd say, his pale blue eyes lingering on her perhaps a moment too long. "She must be a handful for you, Robert. At your age." I'd bristle at that last part, but I'd smile and nod. I was used to people questioning whether I could handle raising a young girl on my own. The school administrators, the social workers, even some of the other parents, they all had that same look, that mixture of pity and doubt. But Marcus was different. His interest felt calculated. It started small. He began appearing at the same places we did. If I took Emma to the park on Saturday mornings, there was Marcus jogging past. If we went to the library on Wednesday afternoons, he'd be browsing the business section, always ready with a wave and a comment about what book Emma had chosen. Coincidence? I told myself. It's a small town. Then came that August evening, the one that changed everything. Emma and I were having dinner on the back porch, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, her favorite. She was telling me about her day at summer camp, about the fort she and her friends had built near the creek, when I noticed Marcus standing at the fence line between our properties. He wasn't doing anything really, just standing there in the fading light, watching. When he saw me looking, he raised his hand in a wave and called out, "Beautiful evening, isn't it?" "Sure is," I called back, but something in my chest tightened. "Emma," he said, addressing her directly, "I heard you got the lead in the camp play. That's wonderful. You must be very talented." Emma, shy as always with adults she didn't know well, just nodded and looked down at her sandwich. "How did you know about the play?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Oh, I must have heard it somewhere," he said vaguely. "Small town, you know. Word gets around." But it didn't get around. The camp had only announced the casting that morning, and Emma hadn't told anyone but me. We'd come straight home afterward. There was no way Marcus could have known unless he'd been listening somehow, or watching more carefully than I'd realized. That night, after Emma went to bed, I stood at my bedroom window and looked out at Marcus's house. His office light was on, and I could see his silhouette moving back and forth. Something wasn't right. I felt it in my bones, the same way I'd felt it when I came home from the grocery store years ago and knew, before I even saw the police car, that something terrible had happened to Sarah. I started paying attention after that. Really paying attention. The thing about being old is that people underestimate you. They see the gray hair, the slight stoop in your shoulders, the reading glasses, and they think you're not paying attention. They think you don't notice things. They're wrong. I began keeping a notebook, an old composition book I found in Sarah's room. In it, I documented every time I saw Marcus, every interaction, every coincidence that wasn't really a coincidence at all. August 15th. Saw Marcus at the grocery store. He was in the cereal aisle when we arrived. Emma mentioned wanting the strawberry cereal. He was still there when we left, hadn't put anything in his cart. August 18th. Marcus happened to be at the dentist's office when I took Emma for her checkup. Our appointment was at 10 a.m. He had no appointment. I checked with the receptionist. August 22nd. Found Marcus talking to Mrs. Henderson from 3 houses down. She mentioned he was asking about Emma, about how I was managing, whether I seemed overwhelmed. She thought he was just being neighborly. I'm not so sure. The list grew. Each entry alone could be dismissed as coincidence or neighborly concern. But together they formed a picture that made my blood run cold. Then came September, and with it, the first real confirmation that my suspicions weren't paranoid delusions. Emma came home from school on a Tuesday, her backpack heavier than usual. When I helped her unpack it, I found something that didn't belong, a professional quality camera, small and expensive, tucked into the side pocket. "Emma, honey, where did this come from?" She looked at it, confused. "I don't know, Grandpa. I've never seen it before." I turned it on. The memory card was full of photos. Photos of our house. Photos of Emma at the park, at school, getting off the bus. Hundreds of them, taken over weeks, maybe months. And in many of them, you could see me, distracted, tired, struggling to keep up with a 9-year-old's energy. The photos were damning. They showed me losing my temper when Emma wouldn't eat her vegetables. They showed me falling asleep on the couch while Emma watched TV. They showed every moment of imperfection, every instance that could be twisted to suggest I wasn't capable of caring for her. My hand shook as I scrolled through them. Someone had planted this camera in Emma's backpack. Someone wanted these photos found, probably by a teacher or school administrator. Someone was building a case against me. I knew who that someone was. I deleted the photos, destroyed the memory card, and kept the camera. Evidence. I needed evidence of my own. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what Marcus was doing and why. What could he possibly gain from taking Emma away from me? Was he some kind of predator? The thought made me sick. But his interest didn't seem sexual, it seemed almost proprietary. Like he believed he had some right to her. At 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went to my computer. I'd learned to use the internet pretty well over the past few years, had to help Emma with her homework and keep up with modern parenting. Now I put those skills to use. I started with Marcus Whitfield's name and the basics. Social media, professional profiles, anything public. He was a financial consultant, owned his own firm, divorced, no children. Nothing suspicious on the surface. Then I dug deeper. I looked at property records, business filings, court documents. It took hours of searching, cross-referencing, following digital breadcrumbs. But slowly, a story began to emerge. Marcus Whitfield had been married 15 years ago to a woman named Patricia Whitfield, née Morrison. They'd divorced after 5 years, no children. According to the court records, Patricia had cited irreconcilable differences and had moved across the country immediately after the divorce was finalized. I almost moved on, but something made me search for Patricia Morrison separately. What I found made my stomach drop. Patricia Morrison had remarried to a man named James Morrison. They'd had a daughter. And then, in a tragic accident 7 years ago, both Patricia and James had been killed in a car crash, leaving their daughter orphaned. The daughter's name was Emily Morrison. Not Emma. Emily. But the birth date was the same. The photos I found in old news articles showed a little girl who could have been Emma's twin. My mind raced. It couldn't be. Emma was Sarah's daughter. I had been there when she was born. I had held her minutes after she came into this world. But the coincidence was too precise to ignore. I kept digging. Sarah and her husband Jake had adopted Emma when she was 2 years old. I'd known that, of course. Sarah had struggled with infertility, and they'd been overjoyed when they were finally matched with a child. But I'd never asked many questions about Emma's birth family. It hadn't seemed important. Emma was ours, and that was all that mattered. Now it mattered very much. I spent the rest of the night searching through boxes in the attic, looking for the adoption papers, Emma's birth certificate, anything that might tell me more about her biological parents. I found them in an old filing cabinet, still sealed in the envelope from the adoption agency. Emily Morrison's biological mother was listed as Patricia Morrison. The father's name had been redacted. It often was in adoption cases where the father hadn't been involved. But I could guess. I could guess with a cold, terrible certainty who that father was. Marcus Whitfield hadn't known Patricia was pregnant when they divorced. Or maybe he had, and she'd kept the child from him. Either way, he'd lost track of his daughter. And then, somehow, he'd found out where she was. He'd found out that his biological daughter was living next door to him, being raised by an elderly man he saw as inadequate. He wanted her back. And he was willing to destroy me to get her. Understanding Marcus's motivation didn't make me sympathetic. It made me furious. Emma wasn't his daughter. Biology didn't give him rights. He hadn't raised her, hadn't been there for her nightmares, hadn't learned to do her hair or helped her with her math homework or held her while she cried for her adoptive parents. He was a stranger. And worse, he was a stranger willing to use manipulation and surveillance to take a child away from the only family she had left. But I also knew that if this went to court, biology might matter. If Marcus could prove he was Emma's biological father, if he could demonstrate that I was an unfit guardian, he might actually succeed in taking her from me. I couldn't let that happen. I wouldn't. So I declared war. The first thing I did was secure our home. I hired a private security company to sweep for surveillance devices. They found 4, 1 in the living room, 1 in Emma's bedroom, 1 in the kitchen, and 1 in my car. All top of the line, all recently installed. I didn't remove them. Not yet. Instead, I started feeding Marcus exactly what I wanted him to see, me being a perfect guardian. Patient, attentive, energetic despite my age. I cooked nutritious meals, while Emma did homework at the kitchen table. I helped her with school projects, took her to the park, read with her every night. I became a model of elderly parenting excellence. Meanwhile, I began building my own case. I hired a private investigator, a retired police detective named Margaret Torres, who came highly recommended. I told her everything, about Marcus, about the surveillance, about my suspicions regarding Emma's biological parentage. If he's her biological father, and he can prove you're not adequately caring for her, he might have a case, Margaret said bluntly. But here's the thing, his methods are illegal. Surveillance without consent, stalking, potentially breaking and entering to plant those devices. That's criminal behavior. We can use that. I don't want to just defend myself. I told her. I want to end this permanently. I want him to never be able to threaten Emma again. Margaret raised an eyebrow. What exactly are you asking me to do, Robert? Find everything. Every parking ticket, every business deal, every person he's wronged. I want to know who Marcus Whitfield really is. And I want to know how to destroy him if it comes to that. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll see what I can find. While Margaret investigated, I took my own steps. I reached out to the adoption agency that had handled Emma's placement, requesting all available records. I contacted the social worker who had done our home study before Sarah and Jake's adoption, then again after I'd taken guardianship. I documented every good report, every positive interaction, every indication that Emma was thriving in my care. I also did something that felt slightly dirty but necessary. I started documenting Marcus's behavior in ways that couldn't be dismissed. I set up my own cameras, capturing his appearances near our house at odd hours, his frequent drives past Emma's school, his presence at locations he had no reason to be. And I waited, because I knew Marcus would make his move soon. Men like him always did. They thought they were smarter than everyone else, that their planning was perfect. They didn't expect resistance from someone like me. They should have. The move came in mid-October, exactly as I predicted. Emma came home from school with a note from her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, requesting a meeting with me. The note mentioned concerns about Emma's well-being and some reports we need to discuss. Reports? Plural. Someone had been talking to the school. I called Margaret immediately. "It's happening." "I know," she said. "I got a tip from a contact at Child Protective Services. There's been an anonymous complaint filed against you. Claims of neglect, inadequate supervision, concerns about your age and health affecting your ability to care for Emma." "Marcus," I said. "Probably. But here's the interesting part. The person who filed the complaint got some of their information wrong. They referenced things that didn't happen, situations that never occurred, which suggests they're relying on second-hand information or fabrication. Can we prove it was him?" "Working on it. But Robert, you need to prepare. CPS is going to do a home visit. They're going to interview Emma. This is serious. I know it is. But I'm ready." And I was. I'd spent 2 months preparing for this exact scenario. My home was immaculate. I had documentation of Emma's medical care, school performance, extracurricular activities. I had character references from teachers, neighbors, Emma's pediatrician. I had recordings of Marcus's stalking behavior and evidence of his surveillance. But I had something else too, something Margaret had uncovered that made me smile grimly when she told me about it. "Robert, you're not going to believe what I found about Marcus Whitfield's finances," Margaret had said during our last meeting. "His consulting business is a front. He's been running a sophisticated investment fraud scheme for years, taking money from elderly clients and funneling it through offshore accounts. We're talking millions of dollars. Can you prove it?" "I can prove enough to interest the FBI. I have statements from 3 potential victims, email correspondence, financial records. It's white-collar crime, but it's serious prison time if prosecuted. Hold on to that information," I told her. "We might need it." Now, as I prepared for the CPS visit and the inevitable confrontation with Marcus, I felt calm, cold, determined. He'd declared war on the wrong grandfather. The CPS visit went exactly as I'd expected. A tired-looking woman in her 30s named Jennifer Sanders came to our home on a Thursday afternoon. She was polite but thorough, inspecting every room, checking the refrigerator, examining Emma's bedroom. "Mr. Chen, I want you to understand that we take all reports seriously," she said as we sat in the living room. "But I also want you to know that I've reviewed your history with us. Your home study after taking guardianship was exemplary. And I can see that Emma has a clean, safe environment here." "Thank you," I said. "But I know this isn't just a routine check. Someone filed a complaint." She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. An anonymous report claimed that Emma was being neglected, that you were unable to adequately supervise her due to your age and health." "I'm 73, I said. "I take medication for high blood pressure, which is well controlled. I walk 2 miles every morning, I'm active in Emma's school, and I haven't missed a single parent-teacher conference or medical appointment since I took guardianship. I have documentation of all of this if you'd like to see it. I would, actually. I provided everything. Medical records showing my good health. School reports showing Emma's excellent attendance and academic performance. Photos and videos of us together, at the park, at her school play, at birthday parties. A letter from her therapist stating that Emma had adjusted remarkably well to her situation and showed no signs of neglect or distress. Jennifer reviewed it all carefully. When she was done, she looked up at me with something like respect in her eyes. Mr. Chen, I have to interview Emma alone now. It's protocol. I understand. She's upstairs doing homework. I'll wait here. The interview took 30 minutes. When Jennifer and Emma came back down, Emma ran to me and hugged me tight. I told her you're the best grandpa in the world, she whispered. Jennifer smiled. Mr. Chen, based on my observations and my conversation with Emma, I see no evidence of neglect or inadequate care. Emma is clearly thriving. She's well-adjusted, happy, and feels safe in your home. I'll be noting in my report that this complaint appears to be unfounded. Thank you, I said, relief washing through me despite my preparation. Can you tell me who filed the complaint? I'm sorry, I can't. Anonymous reports are kept confidential. Even if the person making the report had ulterior motives? Even if they were harassing us? She paused. If you have evidence of harassment or false reporting, you should document it and potentially file a police report. False CPS reports are taken seriously. I'll do that. Thank you for your thoroughness. After Jennifer left, I held Emma close. How are you doing, sweetheart? I'm okay, Grandpa. She was nice. But why did someone say mean things about you? Some people make mistakes, I said carefully. Or sometimes they don't understand a situation. But everything's fine now. But everything wasn't fine. Because that evening, as I was making dinner, Marcus knocked on our door. I considered not answering, but I wanted to see his face. I wanted him to know that his plan had failed. Robert, he said when I opened the door. He had that practiced smile on his face, but I could see the tension around his eyes. I heard there was a CPS visit today. Just wanted to check that everything was okay. How did you hear about that, Marcus? I asked calmly. Oh, you know how it is. People talk. No, I don't know how it is. That visit was supposed to be confidential. So either you have contacts at CPS, or you're the one who filed the complaint. His smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm just a concerned neighbor. Concerned about what, exactly? About Emma. About whether a man your age should be raising a young girl alone. It's a lot of responsibility, Robert. Maybe too much. Emma is doing wonderfully, as CPS confirmed today. So your concern is misplaced. Is it? Because I've seen you struggling. I've seen how tired you get, how you can barely keep up with her energy. She deserves better. And you think you could provide better? You, a stranger she barely knows? Something flickered across his face, surprised that I guessed his intentions, maybe, or calculation about how to respond. I think Emma deserves a younger, more energetic guardian. Someone who can truly give her what she needs. Someone like you. I didn't say that, but you meant it. I stepped closer to him, close enough that he had to look up slightly to meet my eyes. Here's what I know, Marcus. I know you've been following us. I know you planted surveillance devices in my home. I know you took hundreds of photos of Emma without our consent. And I know you filed that CPS complaint hoping they'd find me unfit. His face went pale. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. I have the devices you planted. I have video of you stalking us. And I have a lawyer who's very interested in filing harassment and stalking charges against you. You're bluffing. Try me. I held his gaze. Here's how this is going to work, Marcus. You're going to leave Emma alone. You're going to stop the surveillance, the stalking, the anonymous complaints. You're going to pretend we don't exist. And if you do that, I won't go to the police with what I have. And if I don't, then I destroy you. I said it calmly, matter-of-factly. I have enough evidence to get you arrested. And once that happens, some very interesting information about your business practices might find its way to the FBI. Information about investment fraud, embezzlement, offshore accounts. You'd be looking at serious prison time. Now he looked genuinely shocked. You're insane. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? Patricia Morrison ring a bell? Your ex-wife? The one whose daughter you're trying to reclaim. His face went from pale to ashen. How did you? I know everything, Marcus. I know Emma is biologically yours. I know you found her somehow and decided you wanted her back. But here's what you don't seem to understand. Emma isn't yours. She was never yours. Patricia gave her up because she didn't want you in her life or her daughter's life. Sarah and Jake adopted Emma and loved her. And now I'm raising her, and I love her more than anything in this world. I'm her father, he said, and for the first time, real emotion cracked through his controlled facade. I have rights. You have nothing. You're a sperm donor who showed up 9 years too late. Emma doesn't know you, doesn't need you, and doesn't want you. And if you try to take her from me, I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your life. We stood there on my porch, two men locked in a silent battle of wills. I was older, but I was fighting for my family. He was younger, but he was fighting for ego and control. Finally, he spoke. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Walk away, Marcus. Be smart for once in your life. He turned and left without another word. I watched him cross back to his house, my heart pounding but my hands steady. Round one had gone to me. But I knew Marcus well enough by now to know he wouldn't give up. Men like him never did. I was right. The next 2 weeks were quiet. Too quiet. Marcus avoided us, barely leaving his house except for work. No more coincidental meetings, no more friendly waves. It should have been a relief, but instead it made me nervous. Margaret agreed. Guys like Whitfield don't just give up, she said when I met with her. He's either planning something, or he's consulting with lawyers about his options. Can he actually get custody? Legally? It's complicated. Biological parents do have rights, even if they gave up their children for adoption. But he'd have to prove that he didn't know about Emma, that he wants to be in her life now, and that it's in her best interest. Given his behavior, the stalking, the surveillance, a judge would be skeptical. But it's not impossible. So what do? We prepare for the worst. I'm going to reach out to a family law attorney I know, someone who specializes in complex custody cases. You need to be ready if Marcus files a petition. But Marcus didn't file a custody petition. Instead, he did something much worse. He went after Emma directly. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon. Emma had an after-school art club that ran until 4:30. I always picked her up, always waited in the designated parent pickup area, always made sure I could see her come out of the building. That day, I was running 5 minutes late. Just 5 minutes, I'd had a doctor's appointment that ran over. I called the school to let them know and drove as fast as I dared. When I pulled up to the school at 4:35, Emma wasn't in the pickup area. My heart lurched. I parked and rushed into the building, where I found her in the main office with the principal, Mrs. Davidson. Mr. Chen, Mrs. Davidson said, relief clear on her face. I'm glad you're here. There was a situation. What kind of situation? I asked, pulling Emma into a hug. She was shaking. A man came to pick Emma up, claiming you'd sent him because you were running late. He said he was a family friend. Emma didn't recognize him and refused to go with him, which was exactly the right thing to do. She gave Emma an approving smile. She remembered all the safety rules we teach. What did this man look like? I asked, though I already knew. Mid-40s, blonde hair, wearing a business suit. He had a driver's license with the name Michael Warren, but when we tried to call you to verify and couldn't reach you immediately, we kept Emma here and asked him to wait. He left quickly after that. Michael Warren. An anagram of Marcus Whitfield, not even a particularly clever one. Did you get security footage? I asked. Yes, and we've already filed a police report. Attempted child abduction is serious. Officer Ramirez should be here any minute to take your statement. The police took my statement, Emma's statement, and the security footage. I didn't mention Marcus by name, not yet. I wanted to be absolutely certain before I made that accusation, but I had no doubt it was him. When we got home, I made Emma her favorite dinner and let her watch an extra hour of TV. But inside, I was seething. Marcus had crossed a line. This wasn't surveillance or complaints anymore. This was attempted kidnapping. After Emma went to bed, I called Margaret. He tried to take her from school, I said without preamble. Used a fake name, told them I'd sent him. Jesus Christ. Did the school call the police? Yes. They have footage. Good. Robert, this changes things. This is criminal. We can use this. I want to do more than use it. I want to end him. What are you thinking? You said you have evidence of his investment fraud. How solid is it? Solid enough for the FBI to be interested. I've been in contact with a white-collar crime agent I know. They're building a case, but these things take time. Can we speed it up? Maybe. If we could get more direct evidence, emails, financial records, maybe testimony from another victim, they might move faster. Then that's what we'll do. I'll get you what you need. Robert, be careful. If Marcus realizes you're investigating him, he already knows I am. He just doesn't know how much I've found. I paused. Margaret, I need you to do something else. I need you to find Patricia Morrison's parents, Emma's biological grandparents. If they're still alive, I want to talk to them. Why? Because if Marcus is Emma's biological father, they might have information about why Patricia gave Emma up. Information that could help us keep him away from her. I'll see what I can find. After I hung up, I sat in the dark living room thinking. Marcus had escalated. That meant he was desperate. Desperate men made mistakes. I needed to force him into making a big one. My plan was risky, but I was running out of options. I needed Marcus to incriminate himself, clearly, undeniably, in a way that would end this permanently. So I decided to give him what he wanted. Or at least, make him think I was giving him what he wanted. I asked Margaret to arrange a meeting with Marcus through a lawyer, not Margaret herself, but someone else, someone Marcus wouldn't connect to me. The message was simple. I was reconsidering my position. I was getting older, Emma was getting harder to handle, and maybe it was time to discuss alternative arrangements. Marcus took the bait. Of course he did. The meeting was set for a Saturday afternoon at a coffee shop in the next town over. Neutral ground. I told Emma I had a meeting with an old friend and asked Mrs. Henderson to watch her for a few hours. When I arrived at the coffee shop, Marcus was already there, sitting at a corner table. He looked eager, almost hungry. Robert, he said as I sat down, I appreciate you reaching out. I've been thinking about what you said. I began carefully. About Emma deserving someone younger, more energetic. And? And maybe you were right. Maybe I am too old for this. Maybe Emma would be better off with someone else. His eyes lit up. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. Emma is a wonderful girl. She deserves the best. And you think you're the best? I know I am. I'm her biological father, Robert. I have resources, energy, a stable life. I can give her opportunities you never could. Why didn't you try to find her sooner? Why wait until now? He leaned back, his expression turning calculating. I didn't know about her until recently. Patricia left me and never told me she was pregnant. I only found out about Emma 2 years ago, when I was settling some old financial matters and discovered Patricia had listed a child on her estate documents. It took me time to locate Emma, to confirm she was mine. And then you just happened to move in next door? That wasn't coincidence. Once I knew where Emma was, I made it happen. I wanted to be close to her, to see what kind of life she had. And you decided it wasn't good enough. I decided she deserved better than an elderly man who can barely keep up with her. No offense, Robert, but you're not equipped for this. You struggle. I've seen it. Through the cameras you planted in my house? He had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. I needed to document the situation. For Emma's sake. For Emma's sake, I repeated flatly. Not for yours. It's the same thing. What's good for me is good for her. Is that why you tried to kidnap her from school? That's a harsh word. I was just trying to. Trying to what? Take her without permission? Without legal authority? I'm her father. You're a stranger she's never known. A stranger who's been stalking her, surveilling her, trying to manufacture evidence against her legal guardian. His face hardened. None of that matters. What matters is that I have rights. And I'm going to pursue them, with or without your cooperation. Even if it traumatizes Emma? Even if it tears her away from the only family she has? She'll adjust. Children are resilient. And there it was, the selfishness at the core of everything Marcus did. He didn't care about Emma's well-being. He cared about what he wanted, about possessing something he'd lost, about exerting control. What if I fought you? I asked. What if I refused to cooperate? Then I'll take you to court. And I'll win. I have resources you don't have, Robert. Money, lawyers, time. I'll bury you in legal fees until you can't fight anymore. And all the while, Emma will be caught in the middle, her life in chaos. Is that what you want? No, I said quietly. I want what's best for Emma. Then work with me. Let me transition into her life gradually. I'm not trying to cut you out completely. You can still see her, be a part of her life. But I should be her primary guardian. I pretended to consider this. And if I agree to this, you'll stop the harassment? The surveillance, the complaints? Of course. None of that was personal, Robert. It was just necessary to document the situation. I need time to think about this. And I'd want to talk to a lawyer, make sure Emma's protected. That's reasonable. Take a few days. But Robert? He leaned forward. Don't take too long. My patience has limits. I understand. We parted ways after that. As I drove home, I felt simultaneously disgusted and satisfied. Disgusted by Marcus's callousness, his willingness to traumatize a child for his own ego. But satisfied because he'd said everything I needed him to say. Everything that was now recorded on the device Margaret had given me, concealed in my jacket pocket. When I got home, I uploaded the recording and sent it to Margaret. She called me back within an hour. Robert, this is good. Really good. He admitted to the surveillance, to the stalking, even to the attempted kidnapping, albeit indirectly. And his statements about using legal fees to bury you could be considered harassment or intimidation. Is it enough? combined with everything else we have? Yes. I think it's enough to get a restraining order at minimum. Possibly to press criminal charges. Then let's do it. There's something else. I found Patricia Morrison's parents, Emma's biological grandparents. They're alive and living in Florida. I spoke with Patricia's mother, Helen. Robert, she wants to talk to you. My heart skipped. About what? About Marcus. And about why Patricia gave Emma up for adoption. I called Helen Morrison that evening after Emma was asleep. She was in her early 70s, her voice worn but strong. Mr. Chen, she said after I introduced myself. The investigator you hired told me a little about your situation. I want you to know that Patricia would be grateful Emma is with someone who loves her. Thank you. But I need to understand. Why did Patricia give Emma up? Why didn't Marcus know about her? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Helen spoke again, her voice was heavy with old pain. Because Marcus Whitfield is a monster, Mr. Chen. And my daughter was running for her life. I gripped the phone tighter. Tell me. Patricia met Marcus when she was 23. He was charming, successful, attentive. Everything a young woman could want. They married quickly, too quickly. Within 6 months, she knew she'd made a terrible mistake. What did he do? At first, it was small things. He controlled her finances, monitored her phone calls, questioned where she went and who she saw. Patricia thought it was just him being protective. Then it escalated. He became jealous, possessive, paranoid. He accused her of affairs she wasn't having, checked her odometer to make sure she wasn't going anywhere he didn't approve of. He isolated her from friends and family. Was he violent? Not physically, not at first. But the psychological abuse was constant. He'd tell her she was stupid, worthless, that no one else would ever want her. He'd give her the silent treatment for days over imagined slights. He threatened to ruin her career, her reputation, if she ever left him. Patricia became a shell of herself. I thought of the confident, smiling man who'd sat across from me in the coffee shop, so certain of his rights, his control. The mask he wore was so convincing. When did she leave? After 5 years of marriage, Patricia finally got the courage to file for divorce. Marcus fought it viciously, tried to take everything from her out of spite. But Patricia had documented the abuse, recordings, emails, text messages. She threatened to make it all public if he didn't agree to a quiet divorce. He backed down, but only because he was worried about his business reputation. And she was already pregnant? Yes, though she didn't know it at the time. She found out 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized. She was devastated, Mr. Chen. The thought of having Marcus's child, of being tied to him forever through a baby, it nearly destroyed her. Why didn't she terminate the pregnancy? She considered it. God knows she considered it. But Patricia had always wanted to be a mother, and despite everything, she couldn't bring herself to do it. So she made a different choice. She decided to have the baby and give her up for adoption. A closed adoption, where Marcus could never find out, never have any claim. But she kept it completely secret from him? She had to. If Marcus had known, he would have used the baby to control her. He would have fought for custody, not because he wanted a child, but because he wanted power over Patricia. She moved across the country, changed her name temporarily, had the baby under an assumed identity, and arranged the adoption through a private agency. Emily, I said softly. Yes. Patricia named her Emily. She held her for 1 hour after she was born, said goodbye, and signed the papers. It was the hardest thing she ever did. But she knew it was the only way to keep her daughter safe from Marcus. Did she ever regret it? Helen's voice broke. Every day. But she also knew she'd made the right choice. She followed Emily's life from a distance. The agency would send updates, photos. She knew Emily had been adopted by a wonderful couple, that she was loved and happy. That gave Patricia peace. And then Patricia died. Yes. 7 years ago, in that car accident with James. It was sudden, senseless. They were happy together, Mr. Chen. James was everything Marcus wasn't: kind, gentle, supportive. Patricia had finally found real love. And then it was gone. I sat in the dark, absorbing all of this. Mrs. Morrison, how did Marcus find out about Emma? I don't know for certain. But after Patricia died, there were estate matters to settle. James's family might have mentioned Patricia's first marriage in passing, or perhaps Marcus did his own investigating. However it happened, he somehow pieced together that Patricia had been pregnant, that a child had been born around that time, that she'd been adopted. From there, it would just take money and determination to find her. And now he wants her. He thinks she's his property. That's exactly how Marcus thinks. He doesn't love Emma. He doesn't even know her. But she's his biological daughter, which means in his mind, she belongs to him. It's about ownership, control, the same things that drove him with Patricia. Mrs. Morrison, would you be willing to testify about Marcus's abuse? About why Patricia kept Emma's existence from him? If it will keep Emma safe from him, I'll do whatever you need. I have documentation too, letters from Patricia, recordings she made, the evidence she gathered during the divorce. I've kept it all these years. That could be crucial. Marcus is trying to paint himself as a concerned father who was wrongfully denied his child. But if we can show his history of abuse, his pattern of control, then any judge will see him for what he is. Helen finished. A danger to that little girl. Thank you, I said, emotion thick in my throat. Thank you for trusting me with this. And thank you for caring about Emma, even though you've never met her. She's my granddaughter, Ellen said simply. Blood doesn't require meeting. Would it be possible, someday, when this is all over, to meet her? I think Emma would like that very much. She lost so many people. Having another grandmother who loves her would be a gift. We talked for a few more minutes, making plans for Helen to send me the documentation she had, for her to be available if we needed her testimony. When I hung up, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Anger at Marcus for being even worse than I had suspected. Sadness for Patricia, who'd made an impossible choice and paid such a high price. And determination to make sure Marcus never got his hands on Emma. I called Margaret back and filled her in on everything Helen had told me. This is exactly what we needed, Margaret said. A documented history of abuse and control. Evidence that Patricia feared him enough to hide her pregnancy and give up her child. Combined with his current stalking behavior, no judge will grant him custody. So what's our next move? We go on the offensive. We file for a permanent restraining order against Marcus. We press charges for the surveillance, the stalking, the attempted kidnapping. And we make it very clear that if he continues to pursue Emma, we'll expose every single ugly truth about him. What about the financial crimes? I've already sent everything I have to my FBI contact. They're moving forward with an investigation. With your recorded conversation where Marcus essentially admits to his surveillance and harassment, plus Helen Morrison's testimony about his history, plus the financial evidence, Marcus Whitfield is going to have a very bad year. Good, I said with savage satisfaction. He deserves worse. The next week move quickly. I filed for a restraining order, backed by the mountain of evidence we compiled. The surveillance devices, the photographs from Emma's backpack, the security footage of Marcus attempting to take her from school, the recording of our conversation where he admitted to everything. The hearing was set for the following Tuesday. Marcus had to know it was coming. He had to know his world was about to collapse. but I don't think he truly understood the extent of what I'd uncovered. He thought he was smarter than me, more sophisticated, better resourced. He thought I was just a desperate old man trying to hold onto something I was too weak to keep. He couldn't have been more wrong. The day before the hearing, something interesting happened. Marcus's business partner, a man named Chen, no relation to me, despite the name, showed up at my door. He was younger than Marcus, maybe early 40s, and he looked deeply uncomfortable. "Mr. Chen, I'm sorry to bother you," he said, "but I need to talk to you about Marcus Whitfield." "Come in," I said, curious. We sat in my living room, and Chen fidgeted for a moment before speaking. "I'm Marcus's business partner. Or I was. I'm in the process of dissolving our partnership." "Why?" "Because I found out what he's been doing. The fraud, the embezzlement. I had no idea, Mr. Chen. I swear I had no idea he was stealing from our clients. When the FBI contacted me 2 days ago, I thought there'd been some mistake. But then I started looking through our accounts, our emails, and I realized it was all true." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. Derek seemed genuinely distraught. "I've been cooperating with the FBI, giving them everything I can find. But I heard through a colleague that Marcus has been harassing you and your granddaughter. Is that true?" "It is." "Then I want to help. I have access to Marcus's business files, including personal documents he kept on our shared server. Some of them relate to his search for Emma, how he found her, how he planned to get custody. There are emails, notes, even a timeline he created. It's disturbing. He's obsessed. Would you be willing to provide those files?" "Already done. I sent them to the FBI and to a lawyer I believe you've been working with, a Miss Torres?" "Margaret?" "Yes, she's helping me. Mr. Chen, I want you to know that Marcus fooled me for years. I thought he was just an intense, driven guy. I didn't see the darkness underneath. But after reading what he wrote about you and Emma, about how he planned to break you and reclaim his daughter, those were his words, I realized he's genuinely dangerous. You need to protect that little girl." "I intend to." Derek left after giving me his contact information and promising to testify if needed. After he was gone, I called Margaret. "I just got the files from Chen," she said. "Robert, they're damning. Marcus documented everything, his search for Emma, his decision to move in next door, his surveillance strategy. He wrote about you like you were an obstacle to be removed. There's even an email where he discusses the possibility of having you declared mentally incompetent. Can we use this at the hearing tomorrow?" "Absolutely. The judge needs to see this." Marcus isn't just a concerned father. He's a calculating stalker with a documented plan to separate a child from her legal guardian through any means necessary. What about the FBI investigation? Moving forward rapidly. With Chen's cooperation and the financial records he's provided, they have enough to make an arrest. I'm told it could happen as early as next week. Before or after our hearing? Probably after. But Robert, even if Marcus isn't arrested by tomorrow, we have more than enough to get that restraining order. And once it's in place, he can't come near you or Emma without facing criminal charges. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Patricia, about the choice she'd made to protect her daughter from Marcus. She'd given up her child to keep her safe. Now it was my turn to protect Emma, and I wouldn't fail. The hearing was at 9 a.m. I arranged for Mrs. Henderson to take Emma to school and told Emma I had an important meeting. She was getting anxious. She could sense that something was wrong, that I was worried. But I tried to keep things as normal as possible for her. When I arrived at the courthouse, Margaret was waiting for me, along with a family law attorney she'd recommended, a sharp woman in her 50s named Catherine Reeves. "Ready?" Catherine asked. Ready. Marcus was already in the courtroom when we entered, sitting with his own attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. When Marcus saw me, his expression was cold, controlled. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his mouth. He knew this wasn't going to go his way. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Okoye. She had a reputation for being fair but tough, and she didn't suffer fools. Catherine presented our case methodically. She showed the surveillance devices. She played portions of my recorded conversation with Marcus. She presented the security footage from Emma's school. She entered Derek Chen's files into evidence, including the disturbing emails where Marcus discussed his plans. Then Helen Morrison testified via video conference. She told Patricia's story, explained the abuse, produced the evidence Patricia had gathered. She made it clear that Patricia had fled from Marcus and hidden her pregnancy because she feared him. Marcus's attorney tried to object, tried to argue that events from 15 years ago weren't relevant to current custody considerations. But Judge Okoye shut him down. "I think the history of abuse and control is extremely relevant," she said dryly. "Please continue, Mrs. Morrison." When it was Marcus's turn to testify, he tried to play the victim. He claimed he'd only wanted to know his daughter, that his methods had been imperfect but well-intentioned, that he'd been driven by love. Catherine destroyed him on cross-examination. "Mr. Whitfield, you installed surveillance devices in Mr. Chen's home without his knowledge or consent. Is that correct? I needed to understand Emma's living situation. Yes or no, Mr. Whitfield? Did you install surveillance devices illegally?" "Yes, but you also took hundreds of photographs of Emma without her or her guardian's permission. Correct? I wanted documentation. Yes or no?" "Yes." "You attempted to remove Emma from school using a false name and claiming Mr. Chen had sent you. Correct?" "I was just trying to." "Yes or no, Mr. Whitfield?" "Yes." "And in the recorded conversation with Mr. Chen, you stated that you would bury him in legal fees if he didn't cooperate with your demands. Did you say that?" Marcus's face reddened. "I was trying to encourage cooperation. You threatened a 73-year-old man with financial ruin if he didn't hand over his granddaughter. Yes or no?" "It wasn't a threat, it was." "Your Honor," Catherine said, turning to the judge, "I think Mr. Whitfield's testimony speaks for itself." Judge Okoye agreed. She granted the restraining order immediately. Marcus was to stay at least 500 feet away from me and Emma at all times, was prohibited from any contact with Emma's school or activities, and was barred from any surveillance or communication. "Mr. Whitfield," Judge Okoye said, looking at him with clear disapproval, "your behavior has been reprehensible. You have stalked, surveilled, and attempted to kidnap a child who is not in your custody and has no relationship with you. The fact that you share DNA with this child does not give you the right to terrorize her and her legal guardian. Your Honor, I'm her father. You are a sperm donor who abandoned his ex-wife and had no knowledge of this child's existence for the first 7 years of her life. You have no parental rights. If you attempt to pursue custody through proper legal channels, I will personally ensure that every piece of evidence presented today is included in those proceedings. And I will recommend that you be denied any contact with Emma based on your demonstrated instability and predatory behavior." Marcus's face went from red to white. This is justice, Mr. Whitfield. If you violate this restraining order in any way, you will be arrested. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor," he said through gritted teeth. As we left the courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in months. It wasn't over yet. Marcus could still appeal, could still try other legal avenues. But we'd won the first major battle. "That went even better than I hoped," Catherine said. Judge Okoye was clearly disgusted by his behavior. What happens now? Now we wait and see if Marcus is smart enough to accept defeat. My guess? He won't be, but we're ready for whatever comes next. Margaret pulled me aside. Robert, I got a call during the hearing. The FBI is executing a search warrant on Marcus's home and office today. They're moving forward with the fraud charges. This could be the end of him. I allowed myself a grim smile. Good. Marcus was arrested 3 days later. I heard about it from Mrs. Henderson, who'd heard it from another neighbor, who'd seen the FBI agents and police cars surrounding Marcus's house at 6 in the morning. I have to admit, I watched from my window. I saw them lead him out in handcuffs, saw the boxes of evidence they carried out of his house. His face was a mask of rage and disbelief, as if he couldn't quite process that this was happening to him. The charges were extensive: wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, embezzlement. The FBI had found evidence that Marcus had been stealing from his clients for over a decade, moving millions of dollars through shell companies and offshore accounts. Derek Chen's cooperation had been crucial, but the evidence was overwhelming even without him. The local news covered it extensively. Local financial advisor arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. The headlines read. Marcus's face was on every channel, every newspaper. His reputation, his carefully constructed image of success and respectability, crumbled in a matter of hours. His bail was set at $2 million. He couldn't make it. So Marcus Whitfield, the man who threatened to bury me in legal fees, sat in jail waiting for his trial. But I wasn't done yet. Because while the FBI had him on fraud charges, I wanted to make sure he could never threaten Emma again. Catherine and I filed a motion to have Marcus's parental rights permanently terminated. It was a high bar. The courts were generally reluctant to completely sever biological connections. But given Marcus's criminal behavior, his stalking, his documented history of abuse with Patricia, and the fact that he'd never had any relationship with Emma, we had a strong case. The hearing was set for 6 weeks later. In the meantime, life slowly returned to normal. Emma asked about Marcus once. "Grandpa, why don't we see Mr. Whitfield anymore?" "He moved away, sweetheart," I said, which was technically true. He'd moved to a jail cell. "Oh, I didn't really like him anyway. He looked at me weird." Children's instincts, I thought. They know when something's wrong, even if they can't articulate it. Helen Morrison flew in to visit us. I'd told Emma she had another grandmother who wanted to meet her, and Emma was excited if a bit nervous. When they met, Helen cried. Emma, confused but sweet, hugged her and said, "It's okay, Grandma Helen. I'm happy to meet you too." They spent the afternoon together, looking at photos Helen had brought of Patricia and of Emily as a baby. Emma was fascinated, asking questions about her birth mother, about what she'd been like. "She was brave," Helen told her. "And she loved you very much. She made sure you went to a family who would take care of you, who would love you the way you deserved." "Like Mom and Dad did?" Emma asked. "And like Grandpa does?" "Exactly like that." Before Helen left, she pulled me aside. "Thank you for protecting her. Patricia would be grateful." "I love her," I said simply. "That's all the reason I need." The weeks passed. Marcus's fraud trial was scheduled for several months out. These things took time. But our hearing on parental rights came first. Catherine was confident. With his arrest, the restraining order, Helen's testimony, and Emma's clear thriving in your care, I don't see how the judge rules any other way. She was right. The hearing was almost anticlimactic. Marcus appeared via video conference from jail, looking haggard and angry. His attorney made a half-hearted argument about biological rights and rehabilitation. Catherine countered with the mountain of evidence we'd assembled. Judge Okoye, The same judge who'd granted the restraining order didn't deliver it long. "Mr. Whitfield, you have demonstrated through your actions that you are unfit to have any parental relationship with this child. Your stalking, your surveillance, your attempted kidnapping, your threats against her guardian, and your current incarceration for fraud all indicate that you pose a danger to Emma's well-being. Your parental rights, such as they are hereby terminated. You will have no legal standing to seek custody, visitation, or any contact with Emma. This ruling is permanent." Marcus's face on the video screen contorted with rage. "You can't do this. She's my daughter. I can and I have. This hearing is adjourned." And just like that, it was over. Marcus Whitfield no longer had any legal claim to Emma. She was safe. We were safe. Marcus's fraud trial took place 8 months later. I didn't attend, but I followed it in the news. Chen testified against him. So did a dozen victims who'd lost their life savings to Marcus's schemes. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury convicted him on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 18 years in federal prison. 18 years. By the time he got out, Emma would be 27 years old, fully grown, completely beyond his reach. He'd be in his 60s, his reputation destroyed, his money gone, his freedom taken. The revenge I'd sought wasn't violent or flashy. It was thorough, methodical, and permanent. I'd used his own crimes against him, exposed every lie, dismantled every plan. I'd protected Emma not just for now, but for the rest of her childhood. As for us, we thrived. Emma excelled in school. She made friends, joined the drama club, learned to play piano. She had her difficult days, of course. She still missed her parents, still had moments of grief. But she was healing, growing, becoming a remarkable young person. Helen became a regular presence in our lives, visiting every few months, video calling weekly. Emma gained a grandmother, and I gained a friend who understood what we'd been through. Mrs. Henderson continued to be our wonderful neighbor. We had dinners together, celebrated holidays, became a sort of chosen family. As for me, I was still tired sometimes. My joints still ached. I still struggled to keep up with a preteen's energy. But I was Emma's grandfather, and I wouldn't have traded that job for anything in the world. One evening, about a year after Marcus's sentencing, Emma and I were sitting on the back porch, watching the sunset. She was reading a book, and I was just enjoying the peace. "Grandpa?" she said suddenly. "Yes, sweetheart. Are you happy?" The question surprised me. "Of course I am. Why do you ask?" "I just want to make sure. Because I'm happy. Really happy." "I know it's been hard, with Mom and Dad gone, and I know taking care of me is a lot of work. But I'm happy here with you." I felt my throat tighten with emotion. "Emma, you are the best thing in my life. Every single day with you is a gift." She smiled and went back to her book. And I sat there, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, and thought about everything that had happened. Marcus had tried to take Emma from me. He'd stalked us, threatened us, tried to destroy my reputation and my ability to care for her. He thought he was entitled to her, that his biological connection gave him ownership. But he'd been wrong. Family isn't about biology. It's about love, commitment, sacrifice. It's about showing up every day, even when you're tired. It's about putting someone else's needs before your own. It's about protecting them from monsters, whether those monsters come from outside or from within someone's past. Marcus had wanted revenge on the world for his failed marriage, for his lost control, for his damaged ego. And in seeking it, he'd found his own destruction. My revenge had been simpler. I'd protected my family. I'd exposed the truth. I'd let Marcus's own actions bring him down. and I'd made sure that Emma would never have to fear him again. Some people say revenge is wrong, that it's beneath us, that we should forgive and move on. Maybe they're right in most cases. But when someone threatens your family, when they try to destroy everything you love, sometimes revenge isn't about hatred. Sometimes revenge is about justice. Sometimes it's about protection. Sometimes it's about making sure the monsters can't hurt anyone else. And if that revenge is served cold, calculated over months of careful planning, all the better. Marcus Whitfield had taught me that lesson. He'd shown me what real evil looked like, not dramatic or obvious, but subtle, controlling, dressed up in expensive suits and fake smiles. And I'd shown him what happens when you threaten a grandfather's granddaughter. Years from now, when Emma is grown and living her own life, I hope she'll understand what I did. I hope she'll know that every action I took, every plan I made, every piece of evidence I gathered, was out of love for her. Because in the end, that's what this story is about. Not revenge, really. Not even justice, though that played its part. It's about love. The fierce, protective, uncompromising love of a grandfather who would do anything, to keep his granddaughter safe. And that love defeated Marcus Whitfield more thoroughly than any revenge ever could. 2 years after Marcus's incarceration, I received a letter. It was from him, sent from federal prison. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. In it, Marcus blamed me for everything. For turning the FBI against him. For poisoning Emma against him. For destroying his life. There was no remorse, no acknowledgement of his crimes, no understanding of what he'd done wrong. Just rage and self-pity. I read it once, then burned it. Some people never learn. Some people never change. But I had learned something from all of this. I'd learned that you don't have to be young to be strong. You don't have to be wealthy to win. You don't have to be powerful to protect the people you love. You just have to care more than your enemy does. You have to be willing to fight longer, dig deeper, sacrifice more. And most importantly, you have to be fighting for the right reasons. Marcus fought for ego, control, and possession. I fought for love. That made all the difference. Emma is 14 now. She's thriving, happy, safe. She knows nothing about the war I fought to keep her. Maybe someday I'll tell her. Maybe I'll give her this account, let her understand everything that happened. Or maybe I'll just let her remember that her grandfather loved her. That when the world tried to take her away, he fought back and won. That's the legacy I want to leave her. Not revenge, but protection. Not hatred, but love. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But the sweetest revenge of all is seeing the person you protected thrive while their attacker rots. Emma is thriving. Marcus is rotting in prison. And me? I'm an old man who gets to read bedtime stories, help with homework, and watch a remarkable young woman grow up. I won. Marcus lost. And that's all the revenge I ever needed.